Hey, how's it? So I started gardening in 2023, and butternuts was one of the first things that I not only grew but succeeded in. I wanted to show you guys, a creative video, basically documenting my journey through growing butternuts as a beginner, and all of the things that I've learned, all the findings, and what I'm going to be doing going forward into my now third season. But the video turned out to be extremely long, so I decided to cut it into two parts. So now this is the second part. The first part just documents the journey, the contextualization of everything, and what has happened. This video, I will be discussing all the findings, everything I've learned, and I'll be taking you guys through my thought process of what I'm going to be changing and doing going forward, so that next season, season number 3, I can have an even better, more successful season of growing butternuts. So if that piques your interest, continue watching the video and I'm sure you guys will be stoked. Okay, so let's start talking about some of the findings. The butternuts, they don't need a support. However, if you have minimal space in which to grow them, because they do grow very long, then you definitely want to try and allow them, either give them some form of a support or allocate an area that they can just go absolutely nuts. I mentioned that these vines currently in this area are about 6 meters on average. I have been topping them off, meaning I've been cutting the top portion of the stems to make sure that they don't grow longer. It's mostly just to try and help them focus the energy on ripening all the fruit that's currently existing, instead of reallocating resources to new growth and to new fruit development. Because of that, you need a lot of space, or you need a lot of very large support. But there's a few ways you can do this. Either allocate an area where they can just go crazy, or like what I've done with the tree, right? Allow them, allocate an area in which they can grow into, whether it's up, down, around, doesn't matter. But if you're able to allocate saying, I can plant them here, but then they can grow this way, then at least you'll be able to sort of direct their growth and manage that whole process. If you want to support them, there's some really cool ideas that you can do. You can create an arched trellis or just a simple ladder trellis that they can go up. They have these tendrils, so they'll tend to climb by themselves. If you have a sturdy vertical surface and a sturdy horizontal surface, then you can start looking at allowing them to grow up like ladder trellises and walls, and then onto roofs. You want to be very sure that the structure can take all that live load. You don't want something to collapse because you have 100 butternuts growing on your roof. But it's such a cool idea. I love it, and it's something that I really want to explore a bit. The arched trellis option is a very good option, and it's definitely something that I'm going to be looking at. With a 6 meter vine, if you have an arched trellis that is 2 meters tall and 1 meter wide, that's a 5 meter growing area. And if they're close together and they're wide enough, then you can sort of stack them onto each other. So with regards to the arched trellis option, if you stack them next to each other, right, that means then you'll eventually have that much extra growing room, because then you'll be able to get butternut A with in this location here to grow up 2 meters, a meter, 2 meters, 2 meters, a meter, 2 meters, sort of that sort of effect. And you can just stack each of those trellises on top of each other, or the growing space onto each other. Obviously you want to make sure, again, just like with the whole roof scenario, that they are structurally stable. They're not going to fall over with the weight. They're not going to collapse onto themselves with all that weight, because the butternut vines, they grow very long, very bushy. The butternuts themselves are quite weighty, so there's a lot of live load that's going to be imposed onto the structure. So you definitely want to make sure that they can take all that weight. If, however, you have only one available, or you still have them next to each other, what you can also do is top them off. So as they grow and they sort of come down, you snip off the apical meristem so it does not grow any longer, and then it just focuses on that single trellis to grow and ripen in. So another thing you can do just to sort of direct the growth of your squash plants, now this is a pumpkin, but
it's still applicable. What you can do, you can allocate the space on the outside of your bed to sort of for them to grow and encompass your growing areas. It'll be quite interesting to look at, and it's just a nice way to sort of use that weird transition, because then at least you don't take up bed space, and then it's just sort of growing in this like transitionary area. The other alternative is like what I've got here, but this is more of a, not really by design. So I've got sweet potatoes and beans and stuff here. You can allow and direct the growth of your vining squashes to act as a living mulch. At least this way, when you don't have mulch or it's broken down because maybe it's grass clippings or whatever, then at least because of the size of the leaves, it'll act as a living mulch, and it'll just help to prevent the sun from beating down on the soil all the time and drying it up entirely. So I mentioned in the bush bean video what trichomes are. It's essentially these like little hairs that act to aid in the transpiration and temperature regulation of the plants. Now, some of the plants, they produce, they're able to secrete oils and stuff from these trichomes that can capture insects. So butternuts and even gem squashes, not so much my pumpkins, actually, now that I think about it, but more so the butternuts. They have the trichomes themselves are on the leaves, but on the stems themselves, they're of the prickly variety. I don't know. But so if you have sensitive or delicate skin, these trichomes can be quite abrasive. So I don't have really any issues, but some of my family members, when they're in and amongst these squash vines, they really complain about their skin becoming quite irritated. So it's definitely something you want to consider, especially if you're going to have like a patch like this, or they're going to be in a tree and you want to just work around there and check what's going on. Make sure then, if you have sensitive, delicate skin, that you're wearing the appropriate PPE. Make sure that you've got some gloves on, maybe a long shirt, not shorts, you want some trousers or something. But the trichomes can be a bit prickly. I mean, I've had it on some of the more mature stems, like when I'm grabbing it, then sometimes they can prick you. So they can be brutal. Just fair warning. The flowers. Just in case you're not aware, cucurbits, they produce imperfect flowers. So they'll have a male flower and a female flower. What you'll find is the flowers themselves are quite large and they attract pollinators like crazy. Ladybugs love the flowers. Bees love the flowers. I've never seen so many ladybugs around before. They going absolutely mad for these flowers. But by setting 2 flowers, there's an implication that you definitely need enough pollinators around. However, if you do have a pollinator issue, the nice thing is you can self-pollinate. Essentially, you'll cut off the male flower. You'll see it just looks like a normal flower. It comes straight from the stem. There's no additional bits and bobs on it, and it has a single protuberance on the inside that has all the pollen. So then you'll just strip the outside petals, and then that actual protuberance, you'll use that to diddle the female flower and pollinate in that way. The female flowers are very easy to identify. From the stem, you will see the actual fruit develop, and then from that fruit, there will be the flower. When the flower is open, you'll see there are multiple protuberances on the inside. So even if you can't see the fruit itself on the stem, you can at least look at the protuberances on the inside and know, okay, is it one? Then it's a male flower. Are there multiple? Then it's a female flower. And all you do is you just take the male flower, distribute the pollen nice and evenly on the inside, and yeah, you're pretty much good to go. It's a nice way to ensure that you'll have a good harvest, because then you know you're not going to have any issues with pollinators. However, what I did mention with the whole sun thing, if your plants are only producing male flowers, you have a problem. I have not seen where they only produce female flowers. I don't get it. So with regards to powdery mildew, you can see this area here, how dense it is. I have so many butternuts around here. You can see I do have some issues with powdery mildew on some of these on these areas, but it's not too much of an issue. However, that area over there by the peach tree, it's completely inundated with powdery mildew. It's crazy. So you want to make sure sun and air circulation is available for these plants. But now let's say it hasn't happened, or it's been a very wet season, a very still season with not much wind and airflow. Well, it's not a train smash. I mean, these vines are still producing fruit, they're still going on. And I just want to show you something. I have one butternut, two butternuts there, with not much foliage. However, I have not harvested them. I saw on Reddit the other day someone wanted to harvest their butternuts even though it's been ravaged by powdery mildew. But leave it, rather leave it, because here's the problem. Squash are non-climacteric plants, meaning they don't produce ethylene to ripen the fruits. So whenever you pick the fruit, that is the max ripeness. It's not going to ripen off the stem. So if you don't have any leaves, or they've been ravaged by powdery mildew, just take those leaves, take them off, dispose of them, and then allow the plant, still take care of it, allow the plant to set new growth. I mean, you can see here, this is new growth here. This stem here doesn't have much other growth on it, but it's still going. And because it's producing new growth, it means now, okay, it's able to photosynthesize a little bit better. It'll start maybe even producing more flowers and more fruit. But it's something that you can manage. So rather leave the butternuts to ripen on the vine, allow the plants to reproduce or have new emerging growth, because you really want to make sure that these are sufficiently ripe. And you can see I've got that massive butternut there. There's no growth here. I've got a bit of powdery mildew, but it's going to set new growth. In fact, this might even be some of the new growth right here. So rather leave it. So just because there is powdery mildew, yes, it's an issue, but it can be salvaged. Dispose of those leaves, allow the plant to put on the new growth, and then you'll be fine. Okay, so I've mentioned now that these plants are non-climacteric plants, meaning they will not ripen off the stem. Whenever you harvest them, that is the ripeness that they will be. So, a few things. When you harvest your butternut, you want to make sure that the butternuts are nice and even in terms of shade. There is no green pinstriping on them. There are even the stem that attaches the fruit to the main vine. That also needs to be dry. There's a few reasons for this. The butternuts, because they're non-climacteric, they will continue taking up nutrients and water as long as the fruit is immature. Meaning that the stem, that little attachment, is green. However, once it's dry, it means that fruit is fully mature. It does not require any more water or nutrients to produce viable seed, so it dries off. That is when you want to harvest. If you harvest correctly, then you'll have the full sugar development, it'll taste great, and you'll have viable seed that you can then plant. If you harvest it too early, then you might not have viable seed, the flavor won't be fully developed, and there are a few other implications that I'll get into with harvesting not fully ripened butternuts. Let's say now you've harvested your butternuts. You can char them, you can actually eat them. However, storage, there's a few things that we want to do for storage. You want to cure them. So you can see even this one, I actually harvested a little bit too early, and I've harvested this now about a week and a half ago. It has been curing for that period of time. So what do I mean by that? To store your butternuts nicely, to make sure that they are resistant to a lot of damage during storing, and that they don't have a lot of pest issues or mold development, you want to cure them. So whatever it is, even in like a normal pumpkin or something, you want to put it in a sunny location for about 2 weeks. You essentially want to dry out this outer shell, this skin. You want to harden it up so that pests don't get to it as easily, and by drying this up, it becomes harder and obviously dehydrated. So what ends up happening is it also becomes a nice protective shell from mold. If it's very wet, very moist, then you could potentially get a lot of mold development on the shells in storage. So curing, it's not necessarily specifically for eating, but for storage, you want to make sure you cure it. So if you've been diligent, a little bit more diligent than me, and you've waited for the stems to dry up, you've waited for all the green pinch dropping to disappear, you've cured your butternuts now for 2 weeks. It doesn't have to lie down, by the way, just saying. You've now cured it, and the skin is nice and dehydrated, it's nice and hard. You store it in a cool, dark location. You can store these for about a year. I've heard of people storing these things for 2 years, which is crazy. Now that is food security right there. Let's talk harvest data. So I mentioned that in the first season I grew about 6.5 kilograms of butternuts. That was amongst 10 vines. So that's, that's like just under 2 kilograms per vine. On average, a butternut is about 1 kilogram each. So that means, I really didn't grow many butternuts last season. But now this season, to be honest, I don't even know how many plants I've got. I probably have about 20, just under 20 vines. I've already harvested 7.5 kilograms, and I've got about 50. Yeah, that's a lot of butternuts. And yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm obviously topping them off. But now a butternut vine should be able to produce, I think it's like 6 butternuts per vine. So if you're able to allow it to grow to its fully matured length and you have a nice long growing season, then you can really get a lot of bang for your buck with these things. Best case scenario, if you're able to use some vertical supports, vertical trellising, and you're able to grow about 10 butternuts, and you're able to get about 5 butternuts per vine, you've got essentially a butternut per week for the whole year. That's not bad. It's really not bad at all. And considering, I've got 50 butternuts here in this space, it's definitely not unrealistic. So, like 20 is also at the high end, dude. I don't have 20, but it's in that ballpark. But it's crazy how much food you can produce. Okay, so what I can see currently, excluding the stuff that I've harvested, I have 63, 64 butternuts currently growing here, with a few more forming, and that area there, I can't even see what's going on there. So I have at least 60 butternuts growing in my yard at the moment. And like I mentioned, I've already harvested 7.5 kilograms. So that's some pretty good bang for your buck right there. Okay, so what am I going to be doing going forward? Unfortunately, this season we were pretty much capped with what I can do with butternuts. They do take quite a while to grow. Coming into next season, what I want to do is I want to create some arched trellises. I'm going to create 4 arched trellises here on this back wall. I want to create it sort of at least 2 meters tall, maybe a little bit taller, about 1.1 meters wide. I want to make it wide enough to put 3 butternuts per run. So I'll have 3 butternuts per trellis. So if I have 3 butternuts a trellis, 4 trellises, and each butternut only gives me 4 butternuts, that's like 48 butternuts. That's not bad. That's almost a butternut a week for the whole year. If I can get 5 butternuts or even 6 butternuts a vine, then it's crazy. Then I've got surplus butternuts that I can then make crazy amounts of soup with during the winter. But the reason I want to create an arched trellis, this location, because of the sun, the arched trellis enables me to clear up space on the ground. I will then be able to have essentially these 4 microclimates that I can grow other stuff in. They get a little bit more shade, maybe it's a little bit more humid, so it maybe gives me a bit more variation that I can either grow other more sensitive crops, or I can even try and grow some flowers or something to try and help bring in some pollinators, or just to straight up beautify the garden.
Alright, so that's the video. Yeah, so basically growing butternuts is actually quite easy. They really just need a lot of space. Make sure that you water them in the beginning when they're still seedlings, and then once they feel more established and they're able to root down with their adventitious roots to more easily be able to take up water and nutrients from a larger area, then they really become a little bit more drought tolerant. Give them some form of a vertical support so that they can climb over, so that you can gain access to a little bit more space to cultivate other things, like, I don't know, really like radishes, turnips, anything. And yeah, just watch out for fruit flies if it's a very hot, humid climate. Try, if you go in the vertical support route, just make sure that you've got like a lot of stockings or socks or random ancillary fabrics on hand that you can then cover the butternuts, so that you can try and just keep those damn fruit flies off your delicious harvest. So yeah, pretty positive overall. Definitely recommend growing butternuts. They also store for very long if they're harvested and cured properly. So yeah, have fun. So if you guys enjoy my content and like hearing me go on about random gardening stuff, then I encourage you to watch some of the other videos in my playlist.